Welcome everyone to Melange Just kidding. Welcome to the emelletv show where we bring like some great guests from the OCaml, OCaml, and Rescript ecosystem to talk about their visions and goals. I'm Gabriel, also known as Fake Nichols. As you can see here in the social media, I'll do some teaching for his script for in Brazil. I'm also tech lead here at Walnut.io. It's a great company. You should check out. Yeah, over to Dave.
Cool. Yeah, I'm David or Dave SNX on the internet. I work for Ahrefs, a SEO company. I think you must know it if you know OCaml. Aside from that, I maintain a few open source projects. But yeah, we aside from all of these kind of like techie stuff, we spend from time to time. We bring people from the OCaml community or Rescue community or even Vision community. Anyone who writes an ML language that adds value and has like something great to share. We try to bring him here and ask a lot of silly questions, completely biased from both of us, and we can meet those people that run the libraries and tools that we use. So I think today we have a great guest that has been writing OCaml for a long time and has been a key into OCaml, but let's not say too many good things about him, and let's present him already.
Hi.
Hello, Rudi. Yeah,
Hey,
nice
Dave.
to meet you. Can you present yourself a little bit, and we have the startup done?
Absolutely. So I guess um, a long time OCaml developer. I've been at it for nearing a decade. I'm from Canada, and yeah, and I worked for Tardis. I've started working there ever since the OCaml Labs days. I think it's been 5 years already.
Mm-hmm.
I maintain the Dune build system that I'm sure most OCaml programmers are already familiar with. I maintain OCaml LSP, which is our the LSP-based front end to Merlin, and yeah, and the VS Code extension for OCaml as well.
Nice. I'm pretty sure that if you have OCaml installed, you have probably Dune installed as well, and you have used Dune at some point. So yeah, definitely. It might not know you, but they use your software, so I think that's much better than knowing you. So yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, let's start with a little bit of kind of like general knowing you. Aside from like being from Colorado, how many languages do you speak? I think you were
Canada. I'm from Canada.
right.
Not
Sorry,
Colorado.
Canada.
Sorry, Canada. My bad. And so, aside from English, which yeah, we all know, how many languages do you speak?
Two, I guess. So I also speak some Russian. My family immigrated
Oh,
from
wow.
Russia to Canada when I was a kid.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
nice.
that's the only other language I can claim some fluency in.
I
Yeah,
think there's a Spanish as well
yeah.
there.
Spanish is a project I'm working on
Okay,
it.
okay, nice. So yeah, so you are 11, so like almost a decade in OCaml. So how did you get into like 10 years ago joining OCaml? Is not a doesn't seem like a trend back in the days. So what were like, your motivations to start writing OCaml or learning OCaml at that day?
So I guess my main interest was functional programming in general.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I started learning Scheme, little by little. Quickly realized this stuff is not really all that practical at all. I don't know how familiar you are with Scheme,
Not
but yeah, Scheme standard library, makes OCaml standard library look like, I don't know, the .NET framework, or or
Okay. Okay.
yeah. So it's just utterly tiny and unusable for any kind of real work.
Right.
So then I looked for alternatives, and I saw
Yeah.
OCaml and Haskell. Back then they were equally popular, so I just looked at OCaml and I was like, okay, this seems a bit, more focused on the practical side of things, right?
Okay.
Less known ads,
Interesting.
less concerns about purity, all this stuff. Let me try pick that up instead.
Okay.
Yeah, back then, I'm sure, today people have, in my position, have a lot more choice. They have Rust, they have Scala, Swift, etc. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame that it's kind of hard to pick OCaml for these reasons.
Right. So if you would make the decision today, would you still go back to OCaml? Would you try something else? What would be your choices?
Putting it's hard, right? Because as a beginner, it's you do have to rely on luck a little. You don't quite know what's going to be the best fit for you, right? Until you invest quite a bit of time into something. But since I am less academically minded than I think most OCaml devs, I would probably go for Rust or something.
Right.
That's a pretty good question and a really interesting answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said about academics.
But
That's very
I do
interesting.
not think that Rust is a better language. Just don't get me wrong.
For the notes, let's not confuse the notes. Yeah, totally. So that's interesting, but it's mostly like you said that coming from academia is more like where like all the strength comes from OCaml, or at least like at the beginning, or even like a lot of features from the language are like PhDs and kind of like research. But you came for the practicality, right? Where do you see the practicality in OCaml? Like, is it the language? Is it the community? Is it like where did that come from?
So the language, right? Let's start with that. The community is something that that is very dynamic. It changes over time, right? So the language itself is the implementation is very portable. It runs on many different systems. It's very lightweight. Let's put that in quotes. What I mean by that is that it offers a fairly thin abstraction over over the operating system, over glib, over
Right,
things like that. Right? There's not too many layers in between you, C, and just getting whatever you need done. To me, that's very practical. Let's say, for example, I don't know.
That's a point.
If you've ever tried writing C bindings for Java or whatever, right? You can't really compare something like the JNI to OCaml's very, very simple and effective FFI.
Right, that's a great point.
Yeah. Something that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was trying to change a little bit the topic, so go on. Sorry.
No, there's lots of these things that make OCaml really practical. The fact that the compilation model is, it seemed simple enough for me because I guess I already knew some C and it looked very similar,
Right.
Right. The garbage collection looked really good, at least back then there was, there still is, there's this benchmarking project that shows that OCaml's performance is very competitive to other languages, and that's in part because of its excellent garbage collector.
Right. So like most of the practicality, it's kind of like on the infra side, or like I call it infra, but kind of like on the backend part of the language. Nice. Right.
Yeah, the language itself, I can tell a lot of good things about as well, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit overly packed with features, in my personal opinion.
Okay.
But it still has everything that you might possibly need to write good software, right? It has abstraction in terms of interfaces. It has the best support for these features, for both abstraction and being explicit about your interfaces. It's based on the most, I guess, some of the most solid foundation in programming language theory, right? The standard ML.
Right.
And yeah,
What's
it doesn't
the
shy away from mutation, which is something that is just incredibly important.
Yeah, it's very makes it very practical. What's the name of the benchmarking project that you mentioned? Like, do you remember?
I don't remember the name, but it's I think it's might be the shootout. It's a huge benchmarking project that has many languages, that measures the performance of many languages, not just OCaml, C, C++, Haskell, Python, all of those languages, right?
Right.
A set of standard algorithms, right? Yeah. Over the years, many people have quibbled about the quality of this project and how it's of these benchmarks, and how obviously they're not that representative. But I'd say in real life they are fairly represented. In real life, OCaml does perform very well.
That's performed. Yeah. Yeah. So you have a tooling in your kind of like the maintainer or even the author of a lot of libraries that are used on the open. So before getting into each specific library or asking specific things about Dune or whatever, Opium or the LSP, how is working on open source? Like, what's the experience for you to be a maintainer of all these tools in a kind of like a small community or a community that is driven by a camel?
Tough question. It's the experience is something that I've experienced for so long that it's kind of hard to separate out
Right.
what's worth pointing out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it's in the beginning, I think it starts off as overwhelming because you see just the amount of feature requests, bug reports, etc. Right? It's just huge. It's massive. It's nothing that it's not something that one person can never go through alone, right? So you quickly learn to prioritize. You quickly learn to set concrete goals and work on them.
say no. You
Yeah.
learn to say no as well. Okay.
Not
Right.
well, in open source, people don't, at least I don't usually say no explicitly all that often, but there is, an enthusiastic yes. There's yeah, maybe one day. There is no answer at all. And if the idea is really, really bad, then yes.
Yeah.
An explicit no is warranted.
Different flavors of yes to me, no.
Yeah. Cool. So how would you categorize the community? Like, you would see that it's small and friendly, kind of like grumpy. Well, how would you see the community? Because you said that changes over time. What kind
Yeah.
of changes have been made to the kind of the people of the language?
Mm. Well, in the beginning, the community was an IRC channel on Freenode, right? So it was definitely, there were some elements of grumpiness.
Okay.
And I do remember when asking for help, getting curt replies,
Right.
But things are a lot bigger now. Now there's not even one community. There's more of like a silo. There's the traditional people that have coded in OCaml for many years. There is our new web development arm of the community, right? The people that we've acquired, I guess,
Yeah.
since
Yeah. The danger.
Script and Reason became projects.
Yeah.
I'd say probably that's those are the two main groups. And obviously now, I guess there's now like a third group of mostly people that know OCaml from the industry. And,
Right.
they're not I guess hardcore enthusiasts, but they're people who have who have had to learn it at their day job.
Yeah. Okay. So getting into the topic, before the show, before going live, I was talking that myself, I never worked on a project that was not Dune installed and Dune running as the main build system or testing runner in general, let's say. But before that, I'm very aware that there were like all these utilities or parts of the compiler or tools in general that was like OCaml find, OCaml opt, OCaml C, of course, but all these toolings, and I never worked with _meta or Oasis. All of this for me is like a black old thing that I didn't need to touch. So I'm very babysitted on that. But that's kind of like the introduction or giving context of why Dune, like why it exists and what it solves. That we all know that there were like problems before and Dune solves that, but what are those and why it exists?
What were the problems?
Yeah.
It was a situation. So before Dune, the situation was one of, I guess, I want to say, I have a lot of feelings about that age, but I don't, I admit that I must be pretty biased, but to me, it was just there was this huge choice for tooling, right? There was a lot of choice, really poor integration, no coherence. Basically no documentation for absolutely anything.
So classic OCaml style, no?
Yeah.
Classic OCaml.
Right.
There were essentially 4 types of projects, right? Makefile based projects that pretended that OCaml was like C or C++.
Right.
There was OCaml build that tried to be this fancy new build system for that's written in OCaml. And when you write your rules in OCaml, there was OMake, which was, I'm not sure, another general purpose build system, not one designed specifically for OCaml, that tried to improve on Make in many ways. It was also written in OCaml. And then there was Oasis, which was, I wouldn't necessarily even call Oasis a build system. It was more of like a build system generator, kind of like CMake is, right?
Okay.
So it would take your high-level project description and generate OCaml build rules.
Right. So
yeah,
Dune came in and solved all of these problems of standardization, kind of like quality documentation. So what Dune solve at the end?
So yeah, one thing that Dune realized is that it should the scope of the build system should be a little bit more than what these other tools were.
That's a good point.
Had in mind, right? So let's say, for example, I don't know. Let's say Make didn't know anything about findlib, right? You have to use OCaml find separately. And some people back in the day would say, "Oh, well, that's the Unix philosophy. That's called modularity. This is how this is a good thing. Look, in C or C++, there's pkg config, right? Why shouldn't we have something similar, but in OCaml?" Other tools like OCaml build, right? They mostly focused on just building the artifacts, just producing the artifacts and pretending that this is where and claiming that this is where the job ends. There was nothing else to do. Dune really took those ideas and just extended the scope of all of this, right? So for example, Dune realized we have to understand if Opam is the package manager, which it was already the most popular package manager at that point, then Dune should really understand something about how Opam works. Try to make it easy for the common user that's writing Opam packages. Okay, if most OCaml libraries, they're available through findlib. So Dune should really interface with findlib both ways, right? It should read the libraries from findlib, and it should be able to, well, export libraries defined in Dune to users that might want to consume it through findlib.
Right.
ODoc, right? The documentation generator for OCaml. Back then, OCaml doc was a little more popular, but we saw at that point ODoc was being worked on in a frenzy, so we knew that there was no need to support the old documentation generator.
Right. Yeah, I like this approach of kind of like getting more things done as a build tool, because once, I think maybe back in the days when I was not even born, the dependencies and package managers were not really a thing neither. But when that came in, the Linux philosophy, in this particular case, it doesn't apply anymore, right? Like, because you want to build your library, your application, but you want to test it as well with the same dependencies. You want to release it with the same dependencies, like generate documentation with the same dependencies. So it's definitely this change. I think Dune perfectly made it well. So yeah, that seems definitely like the biggest reason to would you adopt or not adopt Dune.
Yeah, and I should say that when I'm looking at these things, I'm also looking at them in hindsight. I don't. It's not like I sat one day and I thought, okay, these are the problems today, and this is how Dune should fix them. It was actually Jeremy Dimino, an Jane Street employee who has worked, I think, on all of these build systems already. So he was in that special situation where he knew exactly all the problems and how to fix them. And he just sat one day and said, screw it, let's just get it done.
Nice. That sounds cool. So one of the things that Dune does that I think that many other build systems might not do it as well as Dune. For example, Make doesn't do that as well as Dune, which is like the cache. Like when you run Dune build your project twice, the second time, of course, it's much faster due to the cache. Could you explain how that works and like not cache in general, how it works, how Dune cache works?
Yeah, so I mean, Dune is. I'd like to explain that, but let's first clarify, right? So Dune has, I guess, 2 levels of caching, right?
Right.
So the first level is the cache that it keeps in the project local directory or the _build directory, right? Is this the cache that you're referring to? Because there's another cache, the global one that you can share across projects, across Git branches, etc.
Yeah. I mean the global one.
Yeah, the global one. Yeah.
But again, if you want to explain both, I think I'm happy to get through.
They're quite similar. They're quite similar, really. They work on the same principles. So the gist of it is actually very similar to Nix, if you're familiar with Nix. Dune, you can think of the cache as Dune's personal Nix store.
Right.
If you can think of Dune's rules as Nix derivations. Yeah, and obviously, if you don't know anything about Nix, which I don't assume, let me try to explain it from scratch, right?
Yeah,
so,
I got lost in derivations.
Yeah. So Dune's so first of all, what is a Dune rule? It is an action, and roughly it is an action is one of several things, such as running a process, copying a file, etc. Right? So action has dependencies that must be present before the action is executed, and an action produces targets which must be present after the action is executed. Right? So this is Dune assumes that all actions are well specified, they're pure, right? That they never read anything that they don't depend on, and they never produce anything that they haven't specified as a target. So when Dune maintains this database of actions and their targets, right? So the database is keyed by the hash of the action itself and all of its dependencies, so that when Dune tries to run an action, first it hashes all of its inputs, and then the action itself combines that and looks it up in the database, right, in the cache. If it sees a key with that hash existing in the database, it knows that no rebuilding is necessary, and all it has to do is get the outputs from the from the cache and copy them to the underscore build directory.
So Dune, to make it very clear, so Dune hashes the dependencies plus the action.
Absolutely. You must cache the action as well, because if you change the action, then you're going to be producing.
You want to rebuild. Yeah.
For example, let's say you have an action that takes, I don't know, 2 files as command line. You run some process and you take 2 files as command line arguments, right? Well, if you switch the order of how you provide those files in the command line, the action might produce something else. The hash must, therefore, the action is different. Therefore, we may not access the Dune cache.
Right. That makes sense. I have seen a few tools where they hash as well the output, like the std out or std error from each action. So even if the output of your action is the same, you need to recalculate again.
Even if the output of your action is, well, could you describe that again? So, I mean, Dune does the hash the targets as well, right?
Right.
Also puts them in the cache.
Right. So what I meant was like plus, like aside from the targets, so the files that generate or whatever targets that you have, it hashes as well the output. So for example,
you mean like the command line output?
Yeah, exactly. So if you run, for example, the linter. So the linter, if you run the linter twice, your code might change, but neither your targets, neither your action have changed. So you know that the content of the file haven't changed neither, or like have changed. Then you run again the linter, but based on the output. But that's just like something that I saw in the JavaScript.
That makes sense. That makes sense if you want to replay back the output for the actions to the user.
Right.
We don't do that in Dune. I don't know. Maybe we should. But usually, let's say if you're running a linter and you've seen the output, I suppose it does make sense for linters. Yeah, it's a good point. But I guess we don't really have full support for linters.
Yeah, the good thing. Right. Totally. Yeah. But it's true for like tools that are slow, that you want to do these hardcore optimizations. In OCaml, most tools are very fast, so that's kind of like not a point. Talking about performance, I heard a few people from Jane Street, and I think they openly said that they are working on improving the performance of Dune. Dune in kind of like small projects is extremely fast, or at least from my perspective, it's very fast. But for gigantic code bases as Jane Street, it's not so performant, and they are like improving it a lot. And even in the last ICFP, they made a presentation of the memo technique to cache the results, and like the dependencies, and like a crazy talk. What's the story of performance?
It's a multi, like there's more than one story for performance, because there's many aspects to Dune's performance, right? Some are more relevant to industrial users like Jane Street. Others are more relevant to let's say more day-to-day users like myself. At Ahrefs, I think, I don't know, probably you guys fit somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Dune's performance starts getting a little degraded when you start working with really large monorepos, right? Because at that point, the amount of the number of rules that you have is just, well, it's crazy, right? You're gonna have
insane.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of rules.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dune has to be very clever how to manage all these rules, right? For example, the naive, let's say, with make files, right? When you edit a make file, when you run make has to read all the make files that you have, parse them, right? Evaluate them into the internal representation that make uses for rules or whatever, right? And it has to do this on every invocation. Well, that step alone, let's say, if you have a lot of make files, can be can be quite costly, right?
Right.
So that's one problem, right? How to deal with repositories with or Dune workspaces with a large number of rules. Dune has two things to address that, right? It has a watch mode, well, three things actually, but
okay,
it has the watch mode. So it, unlike Make, you can run Dune in the background, and Dune will only Dune will not need to redo this work of rereading every single Dune file you have in the workspace, right? It will instead watch for changes, and then when you make a change to a Dune file, it will only update the rules in its database that are no longer valid, right?
Okay.
That you have invalidated.
Nice.
And the way this works is the memoization framework that you just mentioned, right? The memoization framework makes it very simple to write rules that are automatically invalidated when one of their inputs have changed. Yeah, that's I can talk more about that, but roughly that's there's the watch mode. Don't do the same work, don't rerun the build system over and over. There's the memoization framework, which allows us to minimize the amount of work that we do when responding to changes from the user. And third is, don't load rules unnecessarily, right?
Nice.
And that's Dune's lazy loading mechanism, right?
Nice.
So let's say if you want to, build a single target in your huge mono repo, Dune will not even evaluate rules that aren't relevant to this target.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So with all the rules or all the stanzas in Dune, what's your favorite feature? What's the one that you are like, oh, I'm very proud of this particular one that people might not know?
Tough, because this changes. Usually it changes based on the latest thing that I'm working on, right? So let's say I guess right now my favorite feature is this slick new REPL support that I'm adding to Dune.
Okay.
So the one annoying thing that I'm sure people are aware of is that working with the REPL with OCaml can be a little bit annoying, and it's annoying because of the damned MLI files, right? Some people love them, some people hate them. I love them, but in this case, they surely get in the way. So when you want to load, some library into the REPL, you want to peek into its internals, right? You want to look at a file, you want to look at a module that isn't sealed behind an interface.
Right.
That's a pain. That's a pain to do automatically, especially if you have a library with many dependencies, etc. Right? So I'm working on a new feature in Dune that will just let you point at some .ml file, and Dune will build everything that is necessary to load this module into the REPL and not seal it behind the MLI, so that you can play around with the module and its internals.
That's nice. That's pretty nice.
Yeah. Very similar to how languages like Lisp, I suppose, operate, right? Where you can point your cursor at, you can point at the file and say, load me this into the REPL, and then you can run whatever function you want. You can.
That's nice. That's very nice. That would be very good. Very good. Very good. Yeah. One of the things that Dune does that I don't know if it's recent, but it generates the Merlin files for you, and I'm kind of like.
Yeah, it's not recent. It is one of the older features. Right?
Okay, so for me, again, OCaml is very file-based. everything. So of course, like, and now I'm transitioning from Dune to OCaml LSP. So
Mhm.
Merlin, sorry, Dune goes to from end to end, goes to like your editor and tells like all the dependencies, where they are, how they'll build, if they compile or not, if there's like some warnings here and there. So how is this magic works? Like, what's Merlin and what's OCaml LSP?
So yeah, this is some, must say, some plumbing that isn't very beautiful, but roughly at the end of the day, the only information that Merlin needs is where your build artifacts exist, in particular
Right.
the CMI files and CMT files, right? So it has to know if it has some module X, where's x.cmi, where's x.cmt,
Right.
and yeah, where all the direct, where should it look for the dependencies of this module, right? So Dune obviously is the build system, and hence it has
Right.
very
Knows everything. Yeah.
yeah, it knows exactly where those directories are.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and
Yeah.
all Merlin has to do is ask. All Merlin has to do is ask. We have a subcommand for just for Merlin to run Dune and ask it where, what are let's say when editing this directory, where should it look for the include files?
Right.
I think it works on a per file basis, not per.
Yeah, I arrived quite late to the party. Like when I started like playing with OCaml, there was already like the LSP going on, and then there was this Merlin thing, and then I saw and
Yeah.
wow, this the name is funny, but I never used it, so I had no experience at all of Merlin. So I just saw the name here and there, but I don't even like not sure how was the experience of Merlin compared to
Yeah.
the new LSP
Yeah. I
one.
think I think back in days people used to write them by hand.
Exactly, and that was one of the reasons why it was one of the first features that was added by Dune. I
Wow.
can't recall who added it. It was not me.
Okay.
But anyway, it was, before you had to write these files by hand, and it was a huge chore. They were always wrong. I have never seen a .merlin file that was, accurately written.
Wow,
Right.
that's
Right?
funny.
It was always just some over approximation of all the, library dependencies and all the,
Right.
yeah, of
So
all the,
recently there has been a pull request merge that I think is huge because it's the most voted issue in Dune GitHub tracker, like GitHub issue trackers, which is the Melange support or Bagelscript support. Back in the days, I know that you have been helping Javi and Antonio here in the chat as well. So like there has been some efforts to merge this. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about it. I feel it's a very exciting development. It's something that's great for both Dune and the launch. And really, it's, you know, after that whole, I guess, schism between Reason and OCaml, this is like something that is finally, going back and patching
Right.
the separation between the two tool chains.
Right. Right. So it's kind of like a reunion, no? Nice.
Exactly. It's actually something that's, you know, we're taking the best of both worlds, right? From the OCaml side, we're taking Dune, something that everybody already knows and is already using to build their existing project. And yeah, we're taking Melange's JavaScript compilation support and making this feature available to many new existing OCaml developers, right? And making
Right.
Dune more useful for a fairly large group of users, right? The web developers that would like to use Melange.
Nice. Yeah, that's super sweet. That's super sweet. The
Yeah, how
the
many languages can brag about having two JavaScript compilers, right? That are both well supported by their build systems.
yeah.
How
That's
many?
true. That's true. That's a good flex. Yeah, definitely a good flex. Yeah, something that you could go to a CFP Seattle and talk about it probably.
Mm-hmm.
So what? Yeah, that's true.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. So let's go back to the LSP. So like you both have in your kind of like maintainer of like very developer uh tooling, like aside from Opium, that I think is one of like your libraries,
Mhm.
both LSP and Dune are very like developer centric. uh, so how you said that you learn how to prioritize. How do you prioritize issues from the issue tracker or from the things that your company or your colleagues ask you for, plus your personal ones? Like if you are
Mhm.
annoyed by Dune in a specific thing, like how do you want to work with my complaint and not your complaint?
Yeah. Well, I've worked on these projects enough that I guess my personal list of complaints is already pretty short, right? I've
Right.
already fixed it. For me, it already works quite well.
Okay.
Uh, so how do I prioritize the requests from other users?
Mhm.
It's well, first of all, difficulty obviously is the most important thing to look at because some users they might make future feature requests that require so much work, right? So much basically rewriting, re-engineering of everything, of how everything works, right?
Mhm.
Even if they're worthwhile, there's something that has to go, on the back burner, unfortunately, right?
Right.
So that's the difficulty and obviously the impact, right? I'm trying to look for when I implement people's features, I'm trying to see how desired is this feature
Right.
in the first place, right? If there's only one person asking or complaining about it, well, like it's not yet convincing, right? But then when there is multiple people that are asking for the same feature, obviously the priority just shoots way up for me.
Right. 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 That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and there's
So
also the third
okay.
aspect. Why there's like some features that I think that they don't help any of the users now, but they might help with adoption in the future.
Right.
Like for example, let's say
Yeah.
that
Give an
let's
example.
let's take the REPL example that I mentioned, the REPL feature that I've added in Dune earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that most OCaml users aren't particularly, it's not like, oh, what they need to be productive is a better REPL. No, I use the REPL very rarely myself, very sporadically.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that would make the language. I'm pretty sure that would make it much more attractive, to new users.
Is he getting cut?
Yeah, it looks like he
My,
has some
I think my
connection
connection just
some
flashed for a
connection
second.
issues.
Ah. Yeah.
Yes,
You're
yeah.
back. You're
You're
back.
you're back. Yeah.
I think you're getting sharper.
It looks like I'm disconnected.
Yes.
Yeah. Your face is 4 or 5 pixels now. Getting better though.
Oh.
Yeah. How many compile? Yes, that's true. How many languages can claim having two of everything? Yeah, it's going a little bit back, but definitely, I think I saw three. So Jeff OCaml, of course, Melange, probably the rescript counts as well. But then we had something called OCaml script. Yeah, sorry, go back. That was my diversion.
Oh.
Are you? Yeah, you look perfect now.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah. So I was talking about how I prioritize features, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I hope I give a good idea.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, there's a one question on the chat that I agree, and I think I must ask you. Um, Dune and Nopam, they seem to have like a kind of like a love relation.
Hmm.
That some users might like feel it like it's perfect separation, and some users feel it that there should be like a merge of a one unit tool, like cargo or even go or whatever. What are your thoughts on merging the two into one?
It's a good idea. it's a good idea in theory, but the thing is, and it's something that is, mind you, it's not something that is not done because we don't think it has any value. It's simply a large project to do correctly, but it is something that will provide a lot of value to users. Yeah, there's just some serious practical problems on how to make this work, right?
Right.
Opam and Dune, they're both huge projects. They have completely different code bases, different requirements, different philosophies, right? It's not that easy to just, graft one on top of the other.
Right.
Right. And it's something that needs to be addressed, but it will be addressed, I think, slowly over time, right? But probably by making Opam more modular, right? Making more parts of Opam available, to consume for Dune, in a way that makes sense. For Dune's overall system,
Right.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is that I'm very, I guess, I'm working on tools for developers, but I am somebody with with a taste for UI, right? And I don't. Yeah, for me, if I add something like Opam support to Dune, I want it to be done in a way that gels well with all of Dune's other features. And doesn't really introduce any, I don't know, let's just say unwelcome surprises, to the users, right?
Right. Yeah, totally.
Like, for example, let's say the simplest problem, right? Opam has its own metadata format, and Dune has its own. Does it make sense for a tool like, for a tool like Cargo to have different, two different formats for these things? No, I think that's pretty tasteless, right? And that's one of the things that would have to be addressed by this, marriage, merger.
But do you think it's worth it? Like, the effort seems very big. You said yes?
Absolutely, I think it's worth it.
Okay. Yeah.
I would love to say that, to be honest. Yeah. But it looks like quite the endeavor.
Yeah.
No, I think it would absolutely. I would say it would be absolutely great for Dune to have a package manager.
Right.
And that package manager to be wildly, compatible with Opam. Let's say, for example, Dune's FindLib compatibility, right? I'd say it's basically perfect, right? It works so seamlessly, you don't even have to think about it, right?
Right.
That's the kind of compatibility I want Dune to have with Opam, right? You know nothing about Opam. You don't need to learn another language. You don't need to learn another project. You don't need to open another documentation book, right? You just run Dune. I don't know.
Install. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Dune install's already taken, but
right.
Dune whatever.
Yeah. Fetch depths. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I think everybody would agree here. That of course, like, having one seamless experience is much better to have two experiences that are good by itself, but not perfect together. Yeah. So
we've reached this local optimum where there's no more like easy fruits for us to to add in Dune to make it easier to work with Opam.
Right.
And Opam has its own constraints that make it really hard to add new things to make it easy for Dune to use.
Right. Totally. You said that many people coming from the web kind of like refresh the community. What's your opinion on Reason? Like, now that the activity is not very on like, it's a bit on decline. What were the days before when Reason were like popular, massive, and bring a lot of people?
Yeah. So let's rewind a bit right before Reason. There was lots of discussions about what's preventing OCaml's widespread adoption, right? And there was this, I guess, large wing of users that claimed it was the syntax, right?
Right.
The main problem was the syntax. I never belonged to this group. I don't think OCaml's syntax is the bottleneck here. Certainly, it's not like things can be improved, but really, it's nowhere near as bad. But the wing that claimed the problem was the syntax, you know, put their money where their mouth is and tried to create an alternative, right?
Right.
And well, I think that shut me up and all of the other naysayers pretty quickly, because it ended up giving OCaml a huge boost in adoption, right?
Right.
So I've never seen anything quite like it, but I remember the community just growing on a daily basis for like, you know, months or years at a time, right? And it was very, very impressive, right? I was
Right.
completely impressed, and at that point I was like, okay, well, this reason thing, we need to support it, you know, we need to make everything work with it properly, right? I added one of the features that I've added, one of the first features that I've added to Dune was reason support.
Right.
Right. But, you know, I think the buzz around reason eventually ran out, you know, the hype.
Right.
Yeah. The hype ran out, and there was still, you know, while we managed to ingest a lot of new users, you know, they were running into a lot of issues, day-to-day issues that was making it very hard to actually keep these new users around, you know. So there was a lot of attrition there, and I think at that point, you know, like, you know, we kind of had we kind of realized again that, okay, the problem with the language is not just
it might be the syntax, right? It might be the syntax, but there's something else, right?
Yeah, really, like
Oh wow.
there's other problems that need to be addressed as well.
Right. So what are your thoughts on, like, of course, like it's not going to be like a one single thing that changed completely the popularity of a language, but what are your thoughts? What are the things that stops, like, as you said before, like if you have like to choose again today, you might choose Rust, for example. So what are the things that is stopping OCaml to be the first choice?
Well, as we mentioned before, the integration with Dune and Opam is something that is, you know, something that is preventing adoption.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how much, because at the end of the day, it's not the most ergonomic system, but it does work, right? So like, if you learn it, you know, you understand its quirks, you understand its issues, you can get work done pretty effectively, right? It's not going to prevent you from doing whatever you want with OCaml.
Yep.
So there's that. I think certainly better editor support, right? What we have that's based on Merlin is pretty good, but it's all very, very focused on individual modules, right? All the functionality that we provide is like things like, you know, autocomplete, or like this code action that changes this little thing inside this module, right?
Right.
There's no features that work on a global project scale basis. For example, like a project-wide rename, right? And obviously that's problematic, especially for people that are used to the stuff working out of the box in other languages.
Right.
Yeah. Integration with the build system, which is something that I've been working on very recently, in fact, right? So it doesn't make sense to run your editor and then your build system in the background and then alt tab between the two, you know, to see the errors, right?
Right.
So we have something that fixes that, right? So things like promotions, expect tests, right? Those things that produce diffs that I think, yeah, Dune handles extremely well, right? But they're not very accessible to the editor.
Right. Yeah, that all of these like makes a lot of sense. I heard that, or at least even myself, I would say that part of the community is lacking as well, like libraries. I mean, you know, the kind of like when you get some libraries, some announcement or like a release something.
I don't think so. That's something that I feel strong.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. Let's discuss. We can discuss.
Sure. Well,
no, like
let's take counterexamples.
Right.
Let's take Zig. The language seems to be growing very rapidly. It started from nothing, right? It has no libraries, and not only that, not only are they not focused on writing libraries that are useful for immediate day-to-day work, right? I don't know, like web frameworks, you know, AWS libraries for AWS support, etc. They're basically like reinventing every single wheel they can find, right? From like linkers to C compilers to whatever else it is.
Right.
And people are loving it. Well, why is that? Because developers like writing libraries, right? They don't like.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. My complaint is not like there's no libraries. My complaint, or the thing I think is lacking, is every time that I get in a library, the first kind of like sentence, the first kind of like the kind of like claim is like, oh, it's experimental. We are adding support. It's gonna change a lot, and this library is kind of like 6 years old and like not touched enough to be mature.
Mhm.
So it's not about like the libraries that people like kind of like like to write those. It's more like there's not a lot of energy to maintain those or to get into quality that is perfectly usable in production.
That I agree with.
That's where my complaint.
I agree with that, and I diagnose that as a problem of it's not yet all that pleasant to maintain software in OCaml, right? Like it is pleasant in many ways, but it's, right now, like let's say maintaining a large set of libraries in OCaml requires, quite a bit of busy work, messing around with the release process, with Opam, with build constraints. Some people don't like the builds. Some people find that Dune has some issues, right? That makes it hard to describe the builds of their projects in some cases, right? So the tooling, again, the editor tooling isn't good enough, right? So all of these things just discourage developers from working on their libraries and bringing them to the level of maturity that you're looking for, right?
Right.
If we were to make all of these things much more pleasant, I think our library situation would explode, right? I think people would find would find it a pleasure to write libraries in OCaml, and people will start publishing them over and over and over. And I think it seems counterintuitive, right? Because like getting a large library database is something that takes a long time, right? And it's something that looks huge when you look at it from the outside, right? You look at, let's say, Java, right? Oh, how many libraries do they have? Are we ever going to get to that level? Probably not. And yet many new languages seem to overcome this challenge over and over and over and over. We can talk about languages like Rust, Elixir, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, Zig.
Yeah.
Give people developers. They love making libraries, right?
Yeah.
So you give them the tools. You give them the right tools, and they'll make plenty.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a kind of like a culture. I don't know. Like I look at how Rust takes care of documentation much better than OCaml. Kind of like not the tooling for the documentation, more like the entry level. And I appreciate that, because I came and new or at least like 3-4 years ago in OCaml. So I consider myself a newbie. So when those things are very beginner friendly, you get up to speed very fast. And I think Rust does it very well. At least the culture of teaching, or at least like giving like plain examples, plain words. Nothing really, like, doesn't assume that any internals or know any complex terminology. So I think that's kind of like where we're. But
I don't know how to fix. We do have this, I guess, subculture of people that like to read the source, right? And I'm in that group,
right.
I don't like reading documentation. I like reading the source. And,
right.
That's, I know many people are not like that, right? They prefer a little bit more prose,
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that have been changed is the documentation side. I think that has been like a very drastic change, and I think Darides is betting very hard on documentation, and I think every day there's a merge on improving documentation on the manual every day. Something about the PPX leap. So like there's definitely a lot of effort. So aside from documentation, this big year is the OCaml 5 release. How would you see that? How that would gonna change your day-to-day work?
The level of coolness is, is just you know, it is you know, beyond words. It is just epic. The level, the amount of engineering that
Right.
the multi-core team has managed to accomplish, has managed to get done. This is, you know, some of the most impressive software engineering work that I think I've ever seen, right?
Wow.
And that's, yeah,
Wow, yeah.
that's quite, you know, it's
Crazy.
it's going to be quite something. How will it change my day-to-day work? I'm afraid not much.
Right.
Things like multi-core, they're quite useful, right, for speeding up performance uh, sensitive application, right? Performance sensitive applications. But things like Dune, they're already pretty good. Well, the running processes and concurrently is already something that Dune does well enough that
Right.
we don't need to worry about it too much more. And for things like editor support, like LSP, well, you really don't want your editor to be, you know, eating up all your cores as you're editing a file just so that it can shave off, you know, like 20, 30 milliseconds of
Right.
how fast you see your auto completion results. I don't think people are going to be, you know, interested in editor support that's saturating all their cores all the time.
Right. Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. So aside from multicore, how effects are like how you see effects? Maybe not on your on Dune
Yeah,
neither.
effects are going to
See?
be a much more. The impact of effects is going to be much greater, I think, right?
Right.
Especially on the day-to-day work. Well, as you know, I guess effects are exciting for most people that are sick of writing their code in CPS by hand when using
Right.
monads. I'm afraid that in Dune, we're so used to doing that already that switching to direct style is going to be like just a huge, massive change. And it's, you know, people are not going to be, you know,
Yep.
they're going to be like, okay, what's the benefit, right? Like, yeah, okay, the code looks a little cleaner, but, you know, we're not going to, there's no concrete benefits, and it's a huge body of work, and we have to drop compatibility with older versions of OCaml, etc.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, there's not much there. There's not much there for existing projects. For newer projects, is the way to go, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Antonio asked something that is the year of OCaml on the desktop? I'm not
It is
really sure
not.
if
It
he's
is.
serious or
No,
not.
yeah, he's joking. He's joking. But no, Camel's future is not on the on the desktop right now. Not many people write desktop apps these days.
Definitely. I think it's a joke. It's a joke related
Yes,
to
yes, yes.
Linux.
Yeah, will
So
this be
yeah.
like the year where we're gonna make a huge amount of progress, right, with 5.0? I think so.
Wow.
I think at least we'll generate a lot of buzz, right? I mean, for me personally, as I've said, even if OCaml were to never get multi-core, I'd remain a user, you know, without many complaints, right? I mean,
Right.
you know, but I do know that many people, you know, they look at OCaml and be like, and they look, no multi-core, meh, that's not interesting, you know. I
Right.
wanna, you know, that's ancient, that's not modern, that's.
Right.
And it'll be great, obviously, to shake off that big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are very good
Very good.
words to kind of like close a little bit the show. I think
Yeah.
we can talk about like the future of OCaml for a long time. And I would prefer to not go to this question that popped up in the chat. Let's not get into the drama of people who don't want to use Dune.
Yeah.
Like
No, I
that,
don't have any
Well,
strong words to say, you know, so there's no much drama to extract out of me, right?
right, right, totally. Yeah, there's many different ways of inflicting pain yourself. So anyone likes their own pain. So
you're free.
you are
Fix
free. Yeah, that's
your
kind
own
of like the
pain.
freedom,
Yeah.
the good definition of freedom, probably. So yeah, I would keep going for a long time. I think it's getting darker here, so I think it's time to close the show. Thanks for coming, Rudi. Thanks for accepting the invitation, and thanks for your time. That was a lovely interview.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
It was amazing. I'd love to like keep talking for hours here. Like, thank you for like reserving this time to talk with us. I hope to maybe have you soon here after multicore has landed, so can have some, I don't know, some Dune supercharger or something feature. So let us know about something that comes up. And thank you everyone for joining us. The chat was super warm and amazing here with all the jokes and comments.
All right,
It
guys.
was
Yeah.
quite fantastic.
If I didn't get to any of
Yeah.
your questions, feel free to ask me on Discord.
Yeah, sure.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Aside from that, like all these shows are uploaded in YouTube. So if you go to
Yeah.
our YouTube channel, we publish those, and you can see previous interviews. So and someone mentioned that. So yeah, thank everybody
Yeah.
to tuning in. That was super fun. See you guys.
Cheers.
See you everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
To the next one. Bye bye.